I didn't know before coming here, but I checked it out. There's basically 3 different institutions that are controlling the water that we get on tap. One is called Elizabethtown Water. It's an investor-owned utility. Another is New Jersey American Water, based in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, with 2 million customers. And the third is United Water Resources of Harrington Park, New Jersey. And so far, hey, that's great, you know, local control. Except that in 2000, Suez, a French company, bought Elizabethtown Water. Thames Water of London bought United Water. And on September 15, 4 days after 9/11, the RWE of Germany bought New Jersey American Water. The control of the water we depend on is in Berlin, is in London, is in Paris. So let that sink in a second. I'm not going to engage in sort of inflame your xenophobic tendencies towards protectionism and anti-globalization. My wife and daughter have French passports. I need them to fall in love with America and not be alienated. I'm not also going to engage in corporate bashing, that this is somehow inherently wrong, that the private sector has control of water. I actually, at some point, hope to become one of those moguls with some business that I can talk about in the Q&A. But I wanted to raise them as issues because it gets to the heart of control. Who is and how is the control and politics being managed? It's not a third world issue. It's a very local issue that affects every one of us. So just talking really quick, I'm going to explore the demand that pulls companies like that in, the supply of water that sort of pushes that issue out. Ironically, RWE is now trying to get rid of its ownership of these American water companies. And most importantly, the access to water that unites us all. Now, Alex did a great job with the statistics. I don't want to get too much into that, but water usage has increased 6 times in the last century. It's going to double in the next 10 or 15 years. Driven mostly by irrigation, the food, the hunger that we have is the biggest user. We can say, oh, well, we just got to eat less. But in India and China, as they become middle class, as they become upper class, they're going to want to eat steaks like we had last night. It's not going to be a vegetarian base. And you're going to have then 2 billion people wanting to grow and eat meat that requires 10,000 liters more than growing lettuce and broccoli. Already 1 billion people, as we know, 1.1, have no access to water. They're walking 5-6 hours a day, hoping that that spring or that river may not be dirty and may be drinkable. 2 to 3 billion more people are expected to come. Where they're going to fit in raises these very issues. Not so much as water wars between states, but competition within states, within communities, within families. In China, Will pointed out, you've got all these coastal cities, but the other thing is 550 of these 600 largest cities are already lacking water. They are water scarce as it is, and they're only going to grow more intense. A shift in water from agriculture to industry is good in terms of their GDP, but that shifts the burden in terms of China's not growing its own food, it's going to get it from somewhere else. It's going to get it from Australia. And I'll get to why that becomes problematic in a few bits. The friction and unrest are growing worldwide over this demand as the middle classes struggle to pay their bills in America and elsewhere. There's no politician that's going to stand up and say, water bills need to rise. Businesses, like the ones I just mentioned, there's going to be more of us after you become aware of this. Wait a minute, Germany is controlling my water? There's going to be some more anti-business feeling and blame and moral culpability and litigation over water access. That's sort of an idea of where demand's going. On the flip side is plunging supply. We used to say water is a finite but renewable resource. That's fine, but actually it's now a shrinking resource. For the first time in probably 50, 60, 100,000 years, you have less water in rivers, less water in lakes. If there were no human beings around, it would still be shrinking. That supply is going down. And of course climate change is behind that. People say, well, look, rain's falling less in some places, but it's falling more in some other places, so it's a balance, right? No. If it's falling more in some places, that's fine, but because the temperature is higher, it's evaporating faster in those places as well. So you don't have just have a gross loss from place to place, you have a net loss in water, in rainfall, in lakes, and in the supply. What are the consequences of this? Well, we can expect a permanent drought. Let's get used to that phrase. Permanent drought in the Sahelian area of Africa, creating hardship for billions. Another 250 million to 980 million people, mostly in Africa, some in Asia, are not going to have water in 2050. Okay, that's not a surprise. This is the third world, you know. But in the U.S., in the Southwest, you're also having that situation. The Rocky Mountains, the Sierra Nevada, we think of polar ice caps and melting. That's a bad thing. Glaciers in Montana are an aesthetic problem that we're losing these beautiful glaciers. The fact is that in the Rockies and in the Sierra, that's most of the supply for the course of the year. And as those vanish, as the ice turns to snow, as the snow turns to rain, that comes off the mountains faster, and we can't handle it as fast. Just at the time when most of America is shifting demographically to the Southwest and California. The Dust Bowl that we experienced in the 1930s is something that we could be looking forward to in the future. Well, says who, you know? We saw this Al Gore thing, and you know, he's amplifying the problems here. But this is the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. These are thousands of the most eminent scientists who aren't given the crazy predictions. The second thing is they're not using computer models to make these projections anymore. They did 5-10 years ago. Right now they're using empirical evidence. They're using observations that are going on right now to base their conclusions. I'm not saying what's going to happen, but what's happening as we speak. I mentioned how China will depend more on exporting food from places like Australia. The bad news there is that Australia, as we know, every month has been hitting a record low in the Murray-Darling Basin. This has been an agricultural breadbasket there. They can't supply China. Their farmers are having their water nationalized or rationed or cut off entirely. It's shaved about a point or two off of their GDP. And Australia is smart. Australia has a vibrant democracy. It's got a robust system. Now, it's a rich country as well. So let's think, okay, well, like Australia and America, we'll crunch through. It's a bad time, it's a rough period, some farmers are going to go out of business. But now let's think how that's going to affect places in Africa, places in the Middle East, places in South America, places in Wyoming. Okay, so I've given you demand, I've given you supply, and so far this is a very conventional, neo-Malthusian gloom and doom prediction.